wabarakatuh. Inshallah, now we will be discussing the structure of a C program. A C program basically can be divided into the following sections, that is a header file section, function prototype section, and main and other functions section. Now we'll be looking at each of these sections one by one. First is the header file section. This contains all the predefined functions which can be directly used. So basically header file is nothing but a predefined file which contains all the predefined functions which can be directly used by a user in a C program, and those users cannot, we users cannot modify these functions as they are all predefined, and we can declare all the header files at the top of the C program. Like whenever you are starting a C program, you need to declare the header file like this: #include header file name. So this is the format for specifying a header file. So this is an example: #include stdio.h. stdio.h is a predefined header file, and it contains some functions which can be used by the programmers directly. They don't need to define those functions again. They can directly use those functions in their C program. When a header file is included in a C program, then all the functions and variables defined in that header file are also included and can be used. So whatever functions a header file contains, those functions are also included in the C program itself, and they can be directly used in that C program. Now coming to the function prototypes section, these are the declarations of the functions which are declared by user and to be used in the programs. So suppose a user want to define his own function to perform some calculations, then a user need to specify the function prototype after the header files. So this is not a mandatory condition, but it is a good practice to declare function prototypes after the header files. So these must be defined before the main function. If not declared, it may lead to error. So an example for a function prototype is int max int, int. So this is a function prototype which specifies that the user wants to use a function by the name max, and the parameters for that functions are of integer data type. There are two parameters of integer data type, and the return type for that function is int. Now we'll be coming to the more detailed explanation of what the functions are and how these functions are being defined, but this is the function prototype for a function max, and it takes two integer parameters and returns the largest among those two parameters. So this is an example of a function prototypes, and these are to be declared after the header files. Now the next section contains main and other functions. Now main is the most important function, as the execution of a C program begins from main. Now whenever you are executing a C program, then that C program execution begins at main. So if your program does not have a main function, then that can lead to error. So you need to define the main function. All the other user defined functions can be written before or after the main function. So if you want to define your own functions, then those functions can be declared either before the main function or after the main function. User defined functions can be used to perform specific operations like finding max of two integers. So these user defined functions are for a specific operation like max, which we have already discussed, maximum of two integers. Now example of a function is, this is the general syntax for a function. It begins with the function return type. This specifies what values a function is going to return. As we have already seen, here the max function is returning integer data types, integer values. Next comes the function name. This is the function name like max, which we have already discussed. And then the parameter list. This contains all the parameters which the functions can take. Then comes the body of a function. This contains all the declarative statements, initialization statements, and other instructions. Declarations can be declaration of a variable, and then initialization of those variables, and then other operations like finding the max or multiplying two integers and other functions. And then it is followed by a return statement. Return statement is necessary whenever we have a return type. The return type can be of, if you don't want to return any value, then you can specify void, or you can specify int if you want to return an integer value, or float or to return a floating point value. Our function can be called by using following instruction. So this is the method for calling a function. First is the function name, then followed by an opening bracket, then parameter list, then closing semicolon. So this is how we call a function. By whenever we want to invoke a function for some values, like finding a maximum of 2 integers, then we can call using this prototype, function name and then parameter list. Then comes the comments. These are also the part of a C program, but not necessarily. These are used to describe whenever user wants to write certain statements beside. Suppose whenever user is writing this int max in comment. So this is an example for a comment. So comments are not processed by compiler and used for notes. So whenever user want to take down some notes inside a C program, then they can use comments to take down those notes. There are two types of comments. First is a single line comment and then multiple line comments. Single line comments are for a single line only, and they can be specified by using this keyword 2 backslash. This is an example for a single line comment. And then multiple line comments are used for multiple lines, and we use this backslash star to begin a multiple line comment and star backslash to end a multiple line comment. So this is an example for a multiple line comment. It begins with a backslash star and then ends with a star backslash. So this is the basic structure of a C program. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.